Hello and welcome. On the news, U.S. accuses President Lula of propaganda. Pakistan, 2 killed in landslide, vehicles stuck. The Kremlin says Putin visits Kherson and Luhansk. Vanuatu feels cost of climate crunch, and U.S. man indicted for shooting black tea. The White House has abruptly criticized Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, Brazilian president, for accusing the United States of encouraging the crisis in Ukraine. Lula said after a visit to China the weekend that the U.S. was required to begin a discussion about peace in Ukraine. Visiting Brazil, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met Lula and appreciated Brazil for its efforts. John Kirby, U.S. National Security Council spokesman, accused Lula of parroting Russian and Chinese propaganda. The Brazilian leader, who has pitched himself as a broker for peace talks to end the conflict, said over the weekend that the United States needs to stop encouraging war and start talking about peace. His comments came after meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping. In February, China published a peace strategy that does not openly call for Russia to leave Ukraine. Russia waged a full invasion of Ukraine in February last year. The International Criminal Court has since issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Lavrov, who visited Brasilia on Monday, said Moscow was grateful to our Brazilian friends for their clear understanding of the genesis of the situation. John Kirby said Lula's comments were simply misguided and missed the mark by suggesting the United States and Europe are somehow not interested in peace or that we share responsibility for the war. Brazilian Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira, in response, said of Kirby, "I don't know how or why he reached that conclusion, but I do not agree at all." Brazil has not joined Western countries in enforcing sanctions on Russia and has rejected requests to supply ammunition to Ukraine. While Brazil is calling for peace talks, Ukraine and its allies say an immediate ceasefire will let Russia keep hold of the territory it illicitly obtained through coercion. According to officials, an enormous landslide in northwestern Pakistan has killed at least 2 people, wounded 8 others, and buried numerous vehicles. The landslide occurred early on Tuesday close to Torkham, a major border crossing between Pakistan and Afghanistan in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Bilal Fazi, spokesman for the Rescue 1122 service in the province, said according to reports that rescue officials were informed of a landslide before dawn near Torkham border after rain and thunderstorm which buried many trucks and containers. We have so far recovered dead people, while there were 8 injured, of which 4 have been sent to hospital, he added. Fauzi said authorities have started a search operation to look for people stuck under the landslide. He said there could be over 20 vehicles, including large trucks, under the rubble. The Torkham crossing was closed for more than a week in February this year due to tensions between Pakistani and Afghani authorities following clashes along the border. On Russian-Ukraine war, Vladimir Putin, Russian president, visited the military headquarters in the eastern regions of Ukraine, which are partially occupied by Russia, in his second visit to the region in many months. The Kremlin said on Tuesday that he attended a military command meeting in the southern Kherson region and had reports on the condition there in the Zaporizhia region from commanders of the airborne forces and the Dnieper army group, as well as other senior officers. He also visited the National Guard headquarters in Ukraine's eastern Luhansk region. Videos released by the Kremlin of the visit showed Putin taking a helicopter to Luhansk, but did not say when any of the meetings took place. Putin was in Moscow on Sunday for a meeting with Chinese Defense Minister Li Shangfu. Kherson and Zaporizhia, amongst 4 Ukrainian regions Russia annexed last September, although it did not fully take control of any of the areas in a move condemned as unlawful by Kyiv and its allies. The Russian military retreated from Kherson in November, the regional capital and the largest city it had captured since its February 2022 attack. Forces have since been strengthening their positions on the opposite bank of the Dnieper River in anticipation of a renewed counter-offensive from Ukraine. Russia and Ukrainian forces are presently involved in a strong battle for control of eastern Bakhmut, a town once known as a center for salt mining, but now in ruins. Climate crisis. Mark Phillips runs an adventure tours business on the waterfront in Port Vila. He bought U-Power Sea Adventures, which guides holidaymakers through the waters surrounding Vanuatu's capital in July last year, and was happy about its prospects. Then in early March, Cyclone Judy hit us, and it was swiftly followed by Cyclone Kevin. Coming out of COVID, it was a bit of a risky thing to do, to buy a tourism business with no one in the country and having lockdowns for 3 years, Phillips said, lamenting, "We were prepared for other lockdowns as well, but no one was prepared for 2 Category 4 cyclones in a week." The island nation of Vanuatu, which is disposed to the highest risk of extreme natural disasters in the Pacific, faces an initial recovery bill of tens of millions of dollars following the twin cyclones. A 6-month state of emergency was declared after storms roared through the archipelago on March 1st to 3rd, destroying homes and major infrastructure, including roads, ports, and the airport. Over 251,000 people, 80% of the population, found themselves without power and food. Water supplies were sporadic. Tourism accounted for 45% of the country's gross domestic product, GDP, before COVID hit, with most of the 256,000 international visitors in 2019 traveling from Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and United Kingdom. The country was also a popular stopover for cruise ships, with passengers using the time to shop at local markets, eat at cafes and restaurants, and explore villages as well as coastal marine life. But with COVID-19, the cruise ships stopped coming, and people like Phillips are now grappling with a sharp drop in sales, while also needing to repair buildings, boats, and equipment. In the United States, a white man has been charged with 2 felonies after he allegedly shot a 16-year-old black teenager who mistook his home for another. Andrew Lester, the 85-year-old homeowner, faces charges of felony assault and armed criminal action for the shooting, which left teenager Ralph Yall hospitalized with wounds to his head and right arm. The prosecutor for Clay County, Missouri, Zachary Thompson, on Monday explained in a press conference that a charge of armed criminal action can incur a penalty of up to 15 years, but felony assault carries with a range of punishment of up to life. When asked why an attempted murder charge or a hate crime charge was not pursued, Thompson said that a felony was the highest level of offense in the state of Missouri, after charges may not carry that same level of range or punishment. However, Thompson did say that there was a racial component to the case. A warrant for his arrest was issued on Monday. Lester's bond was set at $200,000. In a statement released on social media, showed that the legal team representing Yall, civil rights lead lawyers Lee Merritt and Ben Crump, hailed the criminal charges but questioned the delay in filing them, quoting the legal principle that justice delayed is justice denied. "We are relieved that charges are finally moving forward, but are disappointed in the delay that necessitated national outcry for an obvious crime. We are cautiously optimistic about accountability and justice," the lawyers wrote. They also shared that U.S. President Joe Biden had personally called Yall's family with prayers for his recovery. The Democratic president has made the reform of U.S. gun laws a major part of his platform. In more stories, in African scenes, Tunisian police detain another leader. Party officials said Tunisian police have arrested opposition leader Rachet Ghannouchi and invaded the headquarters of his Ennahda party. On Monday evening, police raided Ghannouchi's house, carrying out a search before taking him to what party officials called an unknown destination. Hours later, they started a raid on Ennahda's headquarters. Tunisian authorities have detained a number of high-profile critics of President Kais Saied, the ex-law professor elected in 2019 amidst public rage against the political class. In 2021, dismissed the government and suspended parliament before moving to rule by decree and eventually taking control of the judiciary. The senior police official said, according to a report, that Ghannouchi had been brought in for questioning and his house searched on the orders of the public prosecutor investigating inciting statements. A decision on the next steps was with the prosecutor, the official added. He has already faced the current rounds of judicial interrogation over the past year on charges connecting to Ennahda's finances and allegations it allowed Tunisians to leave the North African country and join ISIL, as well as other armed groups after long-time ruler leader Zine El Abidine Ben Ali was removed from power in 2011, and as Vice President Ali Rayad, a former Prime Minister, was detained in connection to similar accusations in December. Ghanouchi and the party deny the charges. The 81-year-old has been detained for questioning in the past and released, but his supporters described Monday's action as a more grave step. According to the report, his lawyer, Najib Chebi, said Ghanouchi had been taken to the El Aouni prison in the east of the capital and had called for his release, saying in a statement that he condemns this very dangerous development. Stop fighting, G7 urges warring parties. On Tuesday, G7 foreign ministers asked warring forces in Sudan to end hostilities immediately and return to deliberations after clashes that have killed close to 200 people. A weeks-long power fight erupted into deadly violence Saturday between the forces of two generals who seized power in a 2021 coup, Sudanese Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his deputy Mohamed Hamdan Daglo, who commands the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The increase in violence forced the issue onto the agenda as the top G7 diplomats met in the Japanese town of Kurosawa for talks. We urge the parties to end hostilities immediately without preconditions, they said in a statement issued after the discussions. They warned that the fighting threatens the security and safety of Sudanese civilians and undermines efforts to restore Sudan's democratic transition. The group urged a return to negotiations and called on all sides to take active measures to curb tensions and ensure the safety of all civilians, including diplomatic and humanitarian personnel. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken earlier on Tuesday spoke with the generals leading to the two fighting factions and urged them to agree to a ceasefire, the State Department said. The U.S. diplomatic convoy was fired upon in Sudan, but those inside were unharmed, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Tuesday. Analysts say the fighting in the capital of the frequently unstable country is extraordinary and could be persistent despite regional and global calls for a ceasefire as diplomats mobilize. Battles have also taken place throughout the vast country and there are fears of regional spillover. Terrified residents of the capital are spending the last and holiest days of Ramadan watching from their windows as tanks roll through the streets, buildings shake and smoke from fires stoked by the fighting hangs in the air. The conflict has seen airstrikes, artillery and heavy gunfire. Those obliged to venture out face queues for bread and petrol at outlets that are not closed. Residents are also dealing with power outages. The head of the United Nations mission to Sudan, Volker Perthes, told the Security Council in a closed-door session that no less than 185 people have been killed and another 1,800 wounded. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres earlier on Monday called on Sudan's warring parties again to immediately cease hostilities. He warned that further escalation could be devastating for the country and the entire region. Let's take a short break. When I come back, I'll bring you more stories. You're welcome back. We begin with Adamawa government poll chaos. INEC bans suspended REC. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, without more unforeseen circumstances, will announce the results of the controversial and dramatic Adamawa state governorship election on Thursday, report said. The National Commissioner and Chairman of Information and Voter Education Committee, Dr. Festus Okoye, said INEC will between Tuesday and Wednesday meet as a commission on the matter. On Monday, the commission had suspended its Adamawa Resident Electoral Commission REC, Mr. Hudu Yunusa Ari, for assuming the powers of the Chief Returning Officer and unilaterally returning the All Progressives Congress APC candidate, Senator Aisha Dahiru Binani, as duly elected when collation had not been concluded, triggering a controversy. The declaration of election results is the responsibility of the returning officer and not the Resident Electoral Commissioner. The INEC summoned the REC and Mele Lamido, returning officer in the election, to its headquarters in Abuja. At the time, the REC announced Binani as the winner of the poll. Results of the supplementary election from 10 local government areas were yet to be collated. Amadou Fintiri, Adamawa State Governor and candidate of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), was in the lead from the results collated on Saturday. Aside from nullifying Yunusa Ari's declaration, the commission yesterday banned the REC from its office as PDP members and supporters protested in the state and issued the electoral umpire a 72-hour ultimatum to announce the results. The group of civil society organizations CSOs described the political drama associated with the supplementary election in Adamawa State as an effort to disrupt Nigeria's democracy and called on President Muhammadu Buhari to intervene. On the 26 states where governorship polls were held, Adamawa is the only one yet to be concluded. The first election on March 18th was declared inconclusive alongside Kebbi. However, the other supplementary elections were conducted and concluded on April 15th, while that of Adamawa ran into a fresh chaos following the action of the suspended REC. Asked when the coalition will resume following the REC suspension, Okoye said the commission will have to meet first and fix a date for continuation of the exercise. A meeting of the commission entails a gathering of the INEC chairman and 12 national commissioners. According to Okoye, most of the national commissioners were deployed to the states to monitor last weekend's supplementary elections, explaining that they were on their way back to Abuja. NLC reinstates suspended LP chairman Abure. In the midst of conflicting judgments from courts, the leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) on Monday led a delegation of workers' unions to recall the embattled national chairman of the Labour Party, Julius Abure. NLC President Joe Ajaero, in doing so, confirmed that the bright fortune of the party was attracting impostors who are bent on crippling the party by all means, a move he said will be resisted by the working class. Ajaero also threatened that Nigerian workers might be forced to occupy the residential homes of suspended impostors, some of whom orchestrated the suspension of Abure as national chairman of the party. Recall that a federal high court seated in Abuja had ordered Abure to stop parading himself as the national chairman of the party a week after a ward in Edo State chapter of the party suspended him over alleged anti-party activities. The party's national vice chairman Lamido Bashir Apapa, shortly after the court order had been accused of being sponsored by the opposition parties, took over the party in an acting capacity. But in another twist, the High Court in Benin gave a counter order restraining anybody from removing the embattled party chairman from his office. Ajaero, who was accompanied by the NLC General Secretary Emmanuel Ogboja, TUC leaders and other labor leaders, as well as hundreds of workers, to the Secretariat, said as trustees of the party, nobody is mandated to occupy any position in the party without their consent. Ajaero said, and I quote, "Today we have come to say enough is enough. Never again would those imposters enter here under any guise, under any order. Even if we lose our leadership, we have to meet as trustees of this Labour Party to decide the next line of action. For anybody to illegally declare himself either as chairman, secretary, or whatever, we urge all workers anywhere in the country where you see such people, arrest them and bring them to us. The hour has come." He also added, as the fastest growing party, you can see that envy and jealousy is creeping in. The people that are pioneering this to sabotage us, let's announce here that we know your fathers. If we continue this, we will go after them. And finally, on the news, striking aviation workers refuse plea disrupts flight operations. Yesterday, aviation workers' unions made good their threat to withdraw services from airports nationwide in protest against the non-implementation of Condition of Service (COS) and other welfare-related issues. The two-day warning strike, which continues today, led to partial grounding of flight operations with so many disruptions. According to reports, a late Sunday night negotiation and concession by the federal government to be aggrieved workers was rejected, and as early as 5 a.m. at Murtala Mohammed Airport, Lagos, yesterday, numerous unionists blocked vehicular access into the airport terminals and surrounding aviation agency offices, causing heavy traffic around Ikeja and environs. With determined travelers forced to walk a distance to meet up with their schedule, the first set of flights for the day were all delayed for about 90 minutes to 2 hours. At the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, the second busiest airport after Lagos, scores of union members were also on ground as of 7 a.m. with minimal disruption of access to both the local and international terminals. Chief Operating Officer of one of the airlines said the injurious action of protesters, with over 70% of scheduled flights affected, is next to total closure of the airspace. Remember that the coalition of aviation workers unions made up of members of the National Union of Air Transport Employees, Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, National Association of Aircraft Pilots and Engineers, the Association of Nigeria Aviation Professionals, and Amalgamated Union of Public Operations Civil Service Technical and Recreation Services Employees recently bemoaned non-implementation of the COS about 7 years after it was negotiated with the workers. They all ruled non-implementation of minimum wage consequential adjustments and arrears for the Nigeria Meteorological Agency NIMET since 2019 and planned demolition of all the agency's buildings in Lagos by the Minister of Aviation for an airport city project, but without consideration for workers that will be displaced. A recap of major stories says U.S. accuses President Lula of propaganda. In Pakistan, 2 killed in landslide vehicle struck. Kremlin says Putin visits Kherson and Luhansk. Vanuatu feels cost of climate crunch. And U.S. man indicted for shooting black teen. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Reiki. Enjoy the rest of your day.